Good afternoon, boys and girls. We will be looking today at comparison and contrast, another in our language arts series. What is comparison? Comparison in writing discusses elements that are similar to two things or similar to two people. Okay, so when we are comparing, we are talking about sameness, things that are alike, things that are similar. Contrast, on the other hand, speak of things that are different. So again, we have to be looking at two things or two persons, but we are now saying how they are different. So we will look at how what this one has that this one does not have and things like those. Now, why do we compare and contrast? Comparison and contrast cues are used in writing to firstly inform your reader. When you compare and contrast, you're somewhat describing what you are writing about. To explain something. To analyze comparison, contrasting, looking at how they're alike, looking at how they're different, and finally to evaluate. Okay, so one method of comparing and contrasting two things, we can use a Venn diagram. Now, the Venn diagram overlaps, so there is an intersection. In the intersection, we actually write things that are similar or alike, sameness. In the outer sections here, we write characteristics of A. This Venn diagram is labeled A and B, so we would write characteristics that are only unique to A. In the section B, you would write characteristics that are only unique to B. This is not the complete thing. We are going to be using this. This is like our pre-writing exercise. We are going to be using this now to inform our writing. So we have already created our Venn diagram. We have written how the two things we are describing are different. We have written how they are alike. So now we have content to work with. So we are moving towards writing our paragraph. Now we know that a paragraph is a group of sentences that tells something about one main idea. So we are comparing and contrasting here. We are going to be using the content of the language arts, Jamaica's Road to Independence. So we are speaking of our founding fathers for Jamaica's independence, Norman Washington Manley and Sir Alexander Bustamante. Now, I have written two topic sentences there just as an example for you to see how we start out. So I write, there are numerous similarities and differences between two of Jamaica's greatest political leaders, Norman Washington Manley and Sir Alexander Bustamante. The fact that I wrote that there are numerous similarities and differences, it means that I'm going to be expounding on how they are different and how they are similar. My next topic sentence, they were cousins, yet political rivals. The similarities between these two are as numerous as the differences. I like this one better. But it's actually saying the very same thing. Okay. Now you are to think of a sentence that would capture your reader's attention and it would somewhat introduce what you are going to be talking about, and so you can have a discussion on the points that you had written in the Venn diagram. In order to compare and contrast, there are some terms that we are to become familiar with. These are called transitional terms. Okay, we have those that are used to compare also as in the same way, like, likewise, similarly, comparable, equally, or in addition. Terms we use to contrast although, but, even though, however, on the other hand, otherwise, yet, still, conversely, as opposed to, or different from. How do we write comparison and contrast pieces? Now I'm going to be discussing in this presentation two methods. The first method I will discuss is the point-by-point method. Now for this method, for each point of comparison, we make a contrasting point. So here I have written an example. Norman Washington Manley and Sir Alexander Bustamante were two great political leaders. That's comparing them. That's how they are alike. That's an element of sameness. They were two great political leaders. However, they were from two different political parties. That's contrasting them. Norman Manley was from the People's National Party, whilst Sir Alexander Bustamante was from the Jamaica Labour Party. The next method in writing comparison and contrast pieces is the block method. In this method of comparison, we present all the arguments relating to one. So if we are writing about the same two persons, we would write all about Sir Alexander Bustamante first. Then we compare and contrast the arguments as we write the B section. So we are now going to write everything that is relating to the second person, but we are making some comparison and contrast as we go along. These are the two persons of whom I spoke, Norman Washington Manley and Sir Alexander Bustamante. They are Jamaica's founding fathers in our independence. They are those persons who actually pioneer independence. And so we are going to be talking about them in Jamaica's road to independence. So I have written here a contrasting statement, friends or foe. Now, I know that these two gentlemen were cousins. They're relatives. So there are supposed to be elements of friendship, but because of their lives in politics, there might be elements of enemy or foeship. Okay, so as it is now, we are going to be looking at it. You will be using the Venn diagram to speak about this. You're going to be talking whether they were friends or foe, or whether they could be both friends and foe at the same time. Norman Washington Manley and Sir Alexander Bustamante. That's it for now, boys and girls. Let us do a little recap. We are looking at comparison and contrast. We say that comparison tells us how things are alike, whilst contrast tells us how they are different. When we describe two things using comparison and contrast cues, there are two methods of writing that we can employ. We can employ the point-by-point method, or we can employ the block method. Point-by-point method, each point you put for comparison, you write a point for contrast. In the block method, you can write the sameness, and then you just write another paragraph that does some contrasting. Okay, we have given you an activity to do. Look at Norman Manley and Sir Alexander Bustamante. Decide whether they are friends or foe, or they are friends and foe. And you can fill out your Venn diagram with the information, comparing them and contrasting them. We will see you in the next lesson, where we'll continue to discuss comparison and contrast cues.